I might just ask them to introduce themselves.
All right. Well, we are live.
Go for it.
All right. Well, welcome to the webinar tonight. We are talking with Chris and Laurie Ayres. My name is Katherine Shai. I'm a national team member and founder of LuchaFIT. And also on this call, we have Joan Fulp, who is USA Wrestling Girls High School Development Committee. And she's also USA Wrestling and NWCA board member. And we will be discussing all the awesome advocacy that Chris and Laurie have done. Joan, I'm going to have you go ahead and take on the introductions of Chris and Laurie. So.
Okay, Chris and Laurie. Well, Chris, been an outstanding wrestler and assistant coach at Lehigh. And you've starting your 13th year, is that correct, Chris, at Princeton University as head coach? And Laurie, I know you and I both have talked because we're both educators, but you've also taken a big role in the Wrestlers in Business organization, as well as with USA Wrestling in New Jersey, taking over some positions there and working with them. So I'm going to get started right away because we're really excited to have you guys on. You have had such a big month in September and October, and we have New Jersey on the books, officially, unanimously voting to push girls wrestling ahead. But here's my first question, and it kind of goes to Chris, and we'll let Laurie jump in. Chris, all the years of wrestling as a competitor, and then as an assistant coach at a university, then on to Princeton as a head coach. How did you get pulled into the girls wrestling arena? How did that happen?
So pretty interesting story. It's a little embarrassing, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But so my daughter had been really interested in sort of coming to our practices for my son, Atticus, he was 8 at the time, I think. And so she'd come down and she'd say, hey, can I help with the little kids? And she'd do some stuff to help them pay attention, and she'd just walk around. And I found that kind of curious. And then she asked to start coming to my college practices too. And I thought that was really strange. So she'd be at my college practice, like watching intensely. And I sort of like thought that was funny. So I went to Laurie, and I was sort of like, or maybe she went to me, I'm not sure which way it was, but it was sort of like, hey, I think Chloe wants to wrestle. And my wife's like, oh, I think she does too. So we sat her down. We said, hey, Chloe, do you want to wrestle? And she's like, oh my God, I so want to wrestle. I so want to wrestle. And I said, why didn't you ask us this earlier? And she was sort of like, well, I didn't think you wanted me to wrestle. So that's the embarrassing piece, was like, for some reason, I was sending out a vibe that maybe she shouldn't participate in the sport. I didn't do it purposefully. And then, I'll steal a quote from the PWC president. It was like sort of like I was engaging in the process of keeping the other half of humanity from participating in this sport. And then, so now fast forward a little bit. So she's wrestling, and I'm going to these events with her, and my God, she's getting so much out of this sport. And that's what really got me excited. I think Laurie was kind of already excited to be more involved, but for me, it was seeing her interact with other girls, to see her struggle through adversity of wrestling, and ask the questions of like, how can I get better at this? And how can I put in the extra time? And so, it's sort of like, for me, it was like, wow, she's so benefiting from the lessons of this sport, just like I did. And so then I got really excited about pushing it. So I think that's sort of like our involvement. And again, embarrassingly, I kind of missed it for a bit of time there, but now I'm really happy to be helping.
Right. And how old was she when that first happened? Has this just been within the last year or two that she, kind of got excited about it?
She was in 7th grade when she started, which I guess, really now girls get started at all different ages. So it worked out nicely for her, for athletic wise. She was sort of ready to take that leap and be interested in athletics. I thought it was a phase in the beginning. I didn't think it would really last, but I think as she became more interested in it and she really devoted herself to it, we got more involved and saw that there was a need in the state. So.
Right. So Chris's story kind of matches your view of it too. We always laugh about how, one member of the family looks at the story and how they get started. And that's kind of how it was with my daughters. My husband was pretty low key, but I was always going, what? wrestling, really? You know, like, are we really going to do this? You mean we have to buy uniforms and shoes? I just remember going through that whole, you know, phase of that. So it's kind of interesting. So let's move on to creating this committee, you know, how you started thinking about, you know, how can we get New Jersey State High School Association to push for a state championship? How do we create more opportunities? So how did that piece, because I know everybody's really interested, you guys moved so quickly, but how did you get that piece started, and what was that process like? Chris, you can start with that and give us some information, or back and forth, however you guys want to handle that.
You know, I kind of joke, she's the one that really pushed for it, I think, and I sort of had the ins. To be perfectly honest, she did most of the legwork on this thing, and it was a lot of, you know, it was a lot of research, honestly, like of what's happened prior. And she could kind of talk about what we learned leading up to the point of like decision to say, like, we can do this.
Well, I think, like, for me, I really was just at a loss for what was going on in the state. I knew I had a daughter involved, and I think this happens for a lot of moms and really parents for that matter. You have a girl who's into it, and as the months tick on, she gets more and more into it, more and more involved in the training process. And then one day you wake up and you realize, wow, like, if they don't have as much opportunities, the girls don't have as much opportunities as the boys, like, what can we do to help? I think initially my thought was like, what's being done? Who's doing something? Hopefully someone's doing something. And, you know, so one day I do some graphic design on the side. So one day I was like, you know what, I'm going to put a graphic up on social media saying, you know, sanction girls wrestling for New Jersey and PA. We had been talking to Pennsylvania parents and they felt the same way. We'd actually put a bet together with a gentleman from PA, Kurt Kraser, and we said, like, we're going to, you know, battle this out so you can get sanctioned first. So I had no idea what I was doing. I kind of slapped up this graphic that said, let's sanction girls wrestling. And it got a lot of traction. And it's actually how we met, Joan. You, I think, saw the graphic and reached out to me. And then when that process started and I talked to you, I thought, you know, let me reach out and see what's going on in New Jersey. And I tried to do some research. I went online. I tried to look at minutes from the State Athletic Association meetings. And I saw that a little bit had been done in terms of wanting to develop committees, but nothing really had come to fruition. People weren't really, you know, gelling and making forward progress at that point. And so you had suggested that we reach out and talk to some different states that had already gotten their sanctioning done or their state tournaments sanctioned or setting that up. So we did. We talked to Mark Reeves in Tennessee, and we talked to you, and we talked to some different folks, and we realized really quickly how to avoid some landmines so that we didn't sort of slow down the process. So I really give credit to, first of all, to our rapid fire here with how we got this done, to the people who came before us who helped us avoid those issues, and then also to the forward-thinking individuals at our NJSIAA Athletic Association. So that was really a big part of it, don't you think?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So when was the first proposal? How did you initiate that? Because that's another place where a lot of states and grassroots committees, they're just trying to get that door open. So how did that happen? How did that door get open for you to get in? And at what level of committee did you talk to?
Funny we're having this interview with you because it happened in this very spot.
Yes.
In this country, we were on the phone with you, and it was funny. Before we got on the phone, we were having a conversation about getting it sanctioned, girls wrestling sanctioned in New Jersey. And I told her, I said, hey, yeah, this is going to take a really long time. This is going to take at least 5 years. We're going to have to get all our ducks in a row. We're going to have to get people involved. So then we got on that call with you, and you said something that changed everything. So we're on that call, and you said, listen, you're not creating a new sport. You're adding a division to the state wrestling tournament. And I think I said, I was like, oh, wait a second. I said, hey, like PIAA, Pennsylvania has AA and AAA, and you just want to add girls. So it's just a division. And so when you said that, I mean, her and I like looked at each other like, oh my God, we can do that for sure. Wrestling exists. It's not a new sport. There's girls already doing it. So once we got sanction out of the way, like the word sanction, it was sort of weird. And that's the way I pitched it. It was like, hey, we're not sanctioning anything. It's not a new sport. We're adding division. That literally lit a fire under my rear end. And so for her too, we looked at each other and we were like, we can get this done.
I think the other thing that was big for us was I did not think, just knowing that at the collegiate level and at the world level that girls wrestle freestyle, I did not assume that every state that had sanctioned or added a girls division at the state level, that they were wrestling in the folk style or scholastic version. I just assumed that they were doing freestyle. So that was really important for us in our process to learn early on and understand why that was, so that when people came to us and said, what do you mean you're starting a folk style tournament for girls? Why in the hell, why in the world would you do that? We could have that education behind us to speak up and say, this is why this is going to happen. And that was super important just from the very beginning, because it sounded like from some of the states I talked to that that was the dividing line early on, that there became a lot of contention over if it would be freestyle or folk style. And I spoke to Sally Roberts and I had a conversation with her. And again, this was a lot of learning, a lot of educating ourselves to avoid these things. She put it to me like this, you got to imagine that it's like track and cross country. Even though they're similar sports, they're still two different sports. So when we think about adding a girls freestyle program, it's really like adding that whole new sport. And that's why when you said that to us, Joan, it was that light bulb going off. Oh my gosh, this isn't adding a whole new sport. It's just creating a division.
Well, the infrastructure too didn't support it. Like we got a lot of, the first thing people would say when we said we were going to do it was like, it's going to be freestyle, right? And that's the first piece I think that you have to educate is, and all you have to say to like coaches is say, well, who's going to coach them? Who's going to ref them? How's the structure going to be set up? And once you kind of think about it, it doesn't work. So I think that was a huge piece too, was understanding that the infrastructure of each state just doesn't support freestyle wrestling. There's just not enough people. And the bottom line, here's the bottom line. We won worlds. We can win worlds again, the men. They do scholastic all the way through college. So there are lessons learned in scholastic that translate just fine when they get to the world level or the collegiate level. Wrestling's wrestling. So I think people can get over that pretty quickly.
And we also educated people to say, hey, look, throughout all of the states that have added the divisions, the numbers have grown exponentially. So the purpose is not to hold states back and say there's some prerequisite for like hitting some magic number and then we're going to add girls wrestling to the state. It was really understanding that by adding the division, you're going to grow wrestling. And then once you grow wrestling for girls in the state, then you're going to be able to add in the freestyle wrestling. You're going to be able to add programming for that and support that after the numbers grow. So.
Right. So talk a little bit about the fact that New Jersey, so we look at numbers, whether it's the National Federation of High School Sports, whether the NFHS numbers, participation numbers, we look at that. We look at weight hydration numbers that you guys use the OPC system, and you use the National Wrestling Coaches Association organization to run that. So New Jersey only had 124 girls, about 126, right there, just right under 130 girls through either of those participation statistics. So talk a little bit about that, because a lot of states are saying from their state organization, it's got to grow. We've got to have larger numbers. And I'm real curious what your state association had to say about numbers when you walked in. Not only just let's have a girls division, let's have the state tournament, but how did they talk about the numbers and how they felt about just about 124 girls right now in the state?
I think you can bypass a lot of things. I've spoken about this a lot. You can get bogged down in the numbers and the little details, sort of, how many girls are going to be at the states, how many girls are in the state now, where are we going to fit the mats? All these little details can be little roadblocks. The thing that I went in with was like, I said, the why. We have to tell them why this should happen, and it's not the details. If you can get to a really compelling why to do something, the details will sort themselves out. So I tried really hard to avoid getting bogged down into those little details. So I'll just give you the basic pitch I gave them. So in all the meetings, I opened with this. I said, we need a compelling why. There's a reason we should do this. I said, there's girls all in your member schools that every day, every single day at 3 p.m., they put on their wrestling shoes, they put on their gear, they walk down a hallway, they enter a room full of men. They go in there and they compete and they wrestle hard And they have to have a lot of courage to do that. They do it because they love the sport. Then add on that, on the weekend, they get to go out on a mat, just the girl and a boy, one-on-one in a singlet, and they have to go out there and compete. And the sad thing is, the fact of the matter is still some people are pointing fingers and they're snickering and they're saying comments on the side. She's got to have a lot of courage to do that. It takes a big, strong woman to really go out there and do those things. And then what do they get for all that courage and hard work at the end of the year? They get to sit in the stands. They get to sit in the stands and watch the other half of humanity compete in the sport that they love. So that's the compelling why for me. And I thought to myself, like, I think that every guy's going to raise their hand, or woman in that meeting will raise their hand if they understand that why. The other piece I brought to them was simply pick any sport. Pick any women's sport that's in high school right now. Soccer. Pick soccer. If you knew now of what you know about soccer and you went back in time to this exact meeting when they're deciding whether to add women's soccer, what do you think you'd do? What do you think you'd do knowing now what you know about women's soccer? You would put your hand up. So for me, it was sort of like, I just want to get them to understand like what's really going on with these girls on a personal level and what's the why. Why should we do this? Do we want to be the last state? Do we want to be the last state that makes a girls wrestling division? That's crazy. So that was like the sort of 3-minute elevator speech that I gave. And I was really fortunate that we had some people behind us. The guy who runs the state tournament then came on and he said, we can do this. So Howie O'Neill, things just kind of got in line. So, you know, the details, how many girls, you know, the proposal, I get a lot of questions about that. You got to have the why, the compelling.
I think too, I think what helped as well is some information that Mark Reeve from Tennessee gave us, Joan and Katherine. He basically said to us that when they started the process in Tennessee, they put together an advisory committee. So that was part of our proposal, and that's certainly something I would suggest for every state who's going through this process. So I think it takes a little bit of the heat off of the state to know that after the proposal goes through, there's going to be an advisory committee of knowledgeable individuals who understand women's wrestling, who are going to help with weights and regionals and the way the tournament's going to run so that it's effective and it's not as much pressure on them. So that's something that we put onto our proposal. I also think just being super flexible and making the language a little ambiguous in the proposal so that when the advisory committee goes in, they have that freedom to make some changes. And I think we also are letting people know, like through meetings, through social media, through NJSIAA, that we're going to have to be flexible. We're admitting right off the bat that we are going to make mistakes, that people are not going to be happy, that some people will be happy with the weights, some people won't be happy, but it's going to be fluid in the beginning and we're going to have a growth mindset. And I think everyone really needs to be thinking that way as we approach this within all the different states.
And just to go forward with another thought, because a lot of states really depend on hearing from all their member schools. That wasn't an issue with New Jersey. They were ready to take that proposal. They understood the need. Had they been talking about girls wrestling? Was that anything that was right there? Kind of they had it, you know, next to their ear and they were hearing the need, or
So,
it was kind of brand new?
Rewind a little bit. So in the spring is when, I mean, it's incredible to think back. I mean, literally after your phone call, we got things in motion. We were a little lucky, to be honest with you. I'm a D1 wrestling coach. The NJSIAA has the coaches clinic. That's our governing body for New Jersey State. They have their coaches clinic at Princeton. I know a few guys in there, and it was great timing because the coaches clinic was coming up. So I called Bill Bruno, huge advocate. He was amazing in this process. He's the guy responsible in NJSIAA. He's responsible for wrestling. That's his sport. So I called him, and it's pretty funny. So I said, hey, we need to get girls wrestling in New Jersey. And he kind of said, yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. I said, we're not sanctioning a new sport. We're just adding the division. And he said, okay, maybe that'll work. So I said, hey, can you meet after that coaches clinic? So sure enough, he was so amazing that he not only met after that, he brought Howie O'Neill, the guy who runs the state tournament, with him. So we could all sit down and see, you know, is this really a real possibility? So we sat down in my office after the coaches clinic And we all sat there, and I gave them the why, and I think that they were amazing. They were like, this needs to happen. And so we got really lucky to have an in, but Bill Bruno was the man. So basically we had a committee. Our committee consisted of an AD. It consisted of a wrestling coach who had girls on his team, Bill Bruno, Jack Kinner, and then Howie O'Neill. And Eileen Boker had been kind of working on some girls wrestling stuff prior. She's an AD. So it was a nice trainer. I'm sorry. It was a nice blend of people in the group. So when we had that meeting, it was sort of like, that's when it happened, really, I think, is that's what really kicked it off. Having that committee has been good. It's like Laurie said, it's relieved the stress of like Bill Bruno having to maybe figure everything out, where we're going to be working on things. So it's a really, we got lucky in a lot of ways, but we did a lot of research, and we had a lot of help from people like you, honestly, and Mark Reeves really guided us in a great direction.
Great. And that committee sounds like it is made up of, like you said, an athletic director, a trainer, people that are a coach, that people that are in that scholastic system. So that's always an important piece for most states to understand, that you do need that component that locks into the scholastic group for that state association to understand that this is what their member schools are ready to accept and push forward. So that's great. Katherine, do we have any questions from anybody that's out there in listening land or anything? Anything coming through?
So a bit of discussion, not specific questions yet, but a bit of discussion about wanting a state like Kentucky to go that way. And I think it's actually perfect that you guys have been bringing up, kind of like your elevator pitch, which was perfect. Such a good way to help direct the mindset, because there's so much resistance to this whole add an extra sport. And I think that's a really amazing way to redirect the thinking and to just, like you said, Laurie, growth mindset, and it like sets you up for like such a nice, a nice entry, for people who may have been resistant before. And then, also talking about just the importance kind of networking and creating all these connections that you've made. I mean, I think that's huge. Just like in jobs, career, like it's almost the same kind of thing. You have to network your way to talking to the right people. I think we want to talk a little bit about, some of the advice for other states. And if, somebody from Kentucky is on here right now, kind of advice for those people who are in those states that are in that situation right now. I think you might know, do we know some of the Kentucky numbers off our head? Their numbers are smaller.
Their numbers are smaller right now. But Chris, I know that any advice, that was another question I had. Any advice for those states as they move forward from either you or Laurie in terms of still kind of focusing on that sanctioning process? Well, there I said the wrong word, on creating that division and creating that state championship. Any other thoughts and advice you'd like to give other states?
So I can give some advice in terms of so I think what I would be thinking if I didn't know our situation is, well, of course they got, New Jersey sanctioned because he's a Division I wrestling coach in the state and he knows everybody. So they did it super quick and it was just easy for them, and it's going to be way hard for us. And so I'll be honest with you, when I was into this and kind of spending, some time, I was spinning my wheels a bit, and I wasn't really getting emails back when I had first started, and I'm upset about it. Like I'm sure a lot of people in the different states are when they're reaching out to these resources and no one's getting back to them. And so I used my resources. I used my networking connection, and I really reached out to Chris and said, hey, who do you know? Can you help me out? And then he started to do all those great phone calls and made those connections. But I think what I would encourage other people like me, if you're feeling that same way, if you're feeling like we're not making any forward progress, I would literally sit down and write down a list of all the resources in your state. So who are the keystone people who are involved with wrestling in your state? And it doesn't matter if you know them. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, I guess, but just the reality of the situation is wrestling has been predominantly a male-dominated sport for years. And so a lot of those networking connections are going to be men. They're going to be D1 coaches, D3 coaches. So I think writing their names down and making connections with them and contacting them is a wonderful way to go. Someone had said to me, I think on social media a couple of days ago, where are all the other D1 coaches in this process or in this this push forward for girls wrestling. And honestly, I do think that would be a tipping point for us. You know, what if all of the D1 coaches unceasingly helped promote girls wrestling in their states? And what if each of them, how many D1 coaches are there now?
77, I think.
So if they each took an afternoon and reached out to their state athletic association, how amazing would that be? If they just made that connection for us and they took one afternoon out of their day and made phone calls to see where we were in the state, I mean, or if they would devote some time, you know, and this could happen. I know it's hard, but I think I would definitely use that as a resource. We know that that could be a path in for us. I mean, luckily we were able to work from the top down. I think that's an ideal approach to make it happen quickly if possible. So that would be my advice.
I also think the committee was really good in providing insights and also giving us an in. So I had Bill, definitely. I knew him. We had a relationship. We weren't close or anything, by the way. We just kind of knew each other passing by. But we're pretty close now, having gone through this. But I think having an AD, I think having a coach, I think if you could get a superintendent on there, I think that's good. And I think those are the people that the governing bodies have to listen to. They don't have to listen to some guy who runs a club who wants girls wrestling to go through at the state. They have to listen to the member schools. So I think that's what maybe people are missing a little bit. The other thing is ADs know all the other ADs. The superintendents know all the other this is what I learned. And the coaches know all the other coaches. So that's how you kind of need to spread your message. If you have a good why and you have some carriers of it, I think that's where you got to get down to, is sort of have that group that's thinking about how we're going to make this happen.
And if we weren't able to get in to talk to some of these people, our next step that we had planned to do, we didn't have to take this step, was to respectfully write a proposal for New Jersey and then reach out to all those keystone people and have them sign their names to it, agreeing to this simple, very like I said, ambiguous proposal, but saying that we wanted that girls wrestling division at the state level. So that could be definitely something, if you feel like, I think you're in a state where you're hitting a roadblock, put together a simple proposal and send it out, have some calls, like Katherine said, network with those people and see if they'd be willing to sign their name, even if it was a Google form and you're having them type their name in the Google Doc. It's just, I think, powerful. It's a powerful message to send to the state that all of these people who we all know within our state and are powerful people and leaders in the wrestling community are also behind this.
All right. Katherine, I think you've got some questions from people.
Yeah. So first, Jeff Martin from Ohio says, have you received any feedback from schools about increased interest as the season approaches?
100%. So it's kind of been funny. Two things have happened. One thing has happened is coaches, we just had our coaches clinic actually yesterday. So I had some coaches talking about it. Coaches are being contacted by girls who want to wrestle. So the message is out. We could talk about that in social media a little bit later. But I think bigger than that, coaches are asking me how to recruit girls. So they see an opportunity here. They see an opportunity here to get to the state tournament. So they're saying, so I was like, let's grow this. And in every conversation that I have with coaches or whatever, I'm pushing it because I really believe that it's crazy. Like the state tournament is going to be probably way more well attended now because the girls are there, because it's the first time the girls tournament's going to be there. The girls' parents are going to go. Their grandparents are going to go. So we maybe don't send as many girls as there is guys, but I guarantee their attendance is going to jump. So there's a lot of factors that's pretty interesting here that, yeah, absolutely. There's more girls interested, and more importantly, coaches are feeling more inclined to go out and try to get girls on their team because they know that there's an opportunity here. It's beautiful.
There's the opportunity. I talked with Rusty Davidson out of New Mexico, and I loved his comment. He said, when a girl goes to a state championship, her third grade teacher's going to go. The gal that cashiers at the grocery store is going to go. The neighbor's going to go. All the cousins are going to go. So, there's just that excitement, and that group that really supports those young ladies in the sport. So,
especially the first one. Unfortunately, I don't get to go because my conference tournament is that weekend. So I'm going to miss it. So I'll be watching on. I'm sure she's going to have it up on her phone or something. But
right.
The other is that, like, sort of like alongside this push for the state tournament, we've run a parallel campaign to just grow wrestling in the state. So, you know, regardless of whether or not this went through, we've seen a lot of momentum building, because as we were going through the process and talking to people, we realized that we were definitely, I think, you know, seasoned wrestling folk. It's sort of our family business. And we were very uneducated about how to advise our own daughter within the arena of girls wrestling in New Jersey. Like, what training opportunities are there for her? What competitions should she be attending? All those things. And as we talked to other families, we realized that, you know, they were having the same experience. So we had connections to find out that information, and then we felt compelled to share it. So we just really worked to help organize what was going on in New Jersey, and took a leadership role in that regard. We organized, you know, we have an embarrassment of resources and riches in New Jersey when it comes to wrestling. You know, we are a very traditional sport for, you know, wrestling is a traditional sport, and we have a club on every corner. We have, you know, tons of coaching. We have tons, every weekend there's tournaments going on. And so what we saw was club coaches wanting girls to come in and like sort of wondering where all the girls were. and what started to happen was there was like this like financial thing going on, right? With like people wanting to see like, oh my gosh, like half of the society is going to start building, or half of our community still is going to start building within the wrestling community in New Jersey. And we want to be part of that. So we felt this like pull for our girls when we really didn't have enough girls to be pulling into like all these clubs. So we really wanted to unite as Team New Jersey before we felt like the girls were kind of being like sucked into like these kind of pockets of New Jersey and not working collectively, because the piece behind that is really trying to run this freestyle thread through the season for the girls. So even though obviously we're pushing for the folk style for the girls in New Jersey, we want them to participate at their middle schools and high schools, we also really want them to understand that they have to also be training and competing in freestyle if they want to take it to the next level and go to college. So we've been working hard in New Jersey to run this parallel campaign where there's offerings for girls for the freestyle training opportunities and also for competition opportunities. And one of the ways we did that was in August, we had an open meeting. And, you know, it's a little scary to have an open meeting to, you know, prepare to present some things and answer some questions and have some discussion, some courageous conversations. But it went so well. It went really, really well. And I think it really sparked everyone who was there, because we saw such passion for all these people who wanted to help grow it. And since then, we've developed a Google document with all of the clubs who are willing to offer training opportunities to the girls. And we can share the Google document as a live document, and we're building our email list, and we're sending that out, and it's evolving. We also tried to build a schedule so girls understood what events they should be attending, because there was so much going on, and all of a sudden this explosion of everyone adding in a division of a girls level to every tournament, and the girls were completely spread out. So we're trying to work together within PA and Maryland and New York and New Jersey with the state leaders and the girls wrestling community to send our girls to the same events. So it's not this sparse situation participation-wise when girls show up.
Right, wonderful. Katherine, any other questions? I think you've got a few more coming through.
Yeah. Jay DeGenio asks about USA Wrestling girls numbers, and I would recommend that he goes through the resource committee on USA Wrestling. What's the bar they would go on to?
Well, just contact me through Facebook is pretty easy, Joan Fulp, and they can connect, and we can certainly give them numbers, and whether it's USA Wrestling numbers for this past 2 seasons, 07 and 18, we can look at their NFHS numbers as well as their state hydration numbers through the National Wrestling Coaches Association. So be glad to help out. Just, contact me through that.
E. Duncan asks, do girls still have the option of wrestling in the boys' state playoffs or championship tournaments, or do they have to choose women's division and opt out of the boys?
So that was again, things are pretty, we try to keep things a little loose so we weren't bound to anything. The discussion has been that, yes, the girls are going to have to do the girls division at the state. So we just feel like, I mean, this is a subject that I think Joan actually talked about this a lot, that people don't want to talk about, but at the end of the day, boys shouldn't be wrestling girls. I mean, that should be the end goal, is that we have enough girls where they're wrestling girls only, and that's the way it is. In Texas, I believe it's a rule that the boys can't wrestle the girls because they have 4,000 girls wrestling there because they've had a state tournament for a lot of years. So I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're providing this opportunity. We've got to make sure that the girls show up. So we're going to talk about it some more, but I think pretty much they're going to be.
That's the goal. Right now, we'll have to choose. The first year, we'll have to choose between either the girls or the boys.
Okay. Yeah. So during the season, they'll still have the opportunity to wrestle boys. How many girls tournaments or girls divisions?
So there was a lot of discussion about that, and you probably understand that it's hard. It's sometimes difficult to pull that off, especially because there's rules. What was kind of interesting was you have to consider the boys' rules in terms of, like, in New Jersey, they can have a certain number of weigh-ins, they can have a certain number of competitions, and then if the girls go and compete somewhere else, that can count against the boys. So we're still working, and I don't quite understand all those rules. The guys and gals at the NJSIAA can help more with that, but so that has to come into the conversation too. It's sort of, is this going to count against both squads? So we're working on that. We've discussed having girl-only events, and I think there's going to be some, but we will have a regional tournament that qualify for the states. That's going to be the week. This is for that gentleman's question in particular. So the regional tournament for New Jersey will be the Sunday of the boys' district tournament. So we know that there's going to be a north and south region, and they're going to qualify depending on the numbers from the hydration on track. We're going to determine how many girls there are and what we think is a good number down at the state tournament.
Sounds good. And we are working a lot with our committee on the states and how they're working out those event dates. That is one of the biggest coaches' questions, are event dates. So we do have quite a few states that have already created that information and either created it parallel to the boys' system, so that if a girl does go to a different tournament from the boys, it doesn't count against those boys' event dates. So that's being worked out in quite a few states right now. So
I'd like that information. This just happened so quickly that we just wanted to keep them tied to the boys' stuff. And so, we haven't really tried to, because legislation takes a long time.
Right.
And so it could take years. And so, I'd really be interested to hear what those states are doing for sure.
Sure,
and then alongside of that, will the women's division affect team score?
That's a great question. So the beautiful thing about New Jersey, and Mike Moyer speaks about this a lot, the beautiful thing about New Jersey is there's no team score. So they have their own dual meet tournament, which is incredibly important. So Mike Moyer talks a lot about how important the dual meet is, and a lot of people like to go to dual meets, and teams are getting away from that. So New Jersey is a great model. We're kind of getting off girls wrestling a little bit, but they don't keep a team score to make sure that the dual meet state tournament is important. So there will be no team score at the states.
Any more questions, Katherine, on your end over there?
That's it for now. I think we can kind of push forward and start talking a little bit about your promotion, not only of high school state championships, but just kind of how you've reached out to girls of all ages to give wrestling a try. You guys have promoted a ton on Facebook with the New Jersey Girls Wrestling page. You've had posters, PowerPoints, videos, and interviews. And how about you guys kind of talk about the importance of, like, the interest that kind of type of media created, and how it's actually, like, really pushed the movement through New Jersey?
Well, it's really hard, right? Like, we didn't know how to reach people, because it's not like we can call the schools and they're going to give us everybody's information. So we were trying to follow some suggestions from USA Wrestling and your development committee, and really create some social media splash. And so we had actually just, come off having the WIBN and Princeton work together to host the All-Star Classic for Division I men's wrestling. And it was this huge thing that we had undertaken. And we had learned a lot about social media and how videos and clips and just visuals were really important. So through Chris's wrestling at Princeton and, being the head of that program, we had also had some experience with videos and social media and learning a lot from that regard. So we thought, why can't we use what we learned and promote girls wrestling in New Jersey? So So, you know, Mike Harris has been fantastic, and he's been a big part of growing New Jersey wrestling. He's the director of New Jersey Wrestling through USA Wrestling for New Jersey, and I'm working with him now as the vice director. And he had started a Facebook page, and, you know, he's got a million different hats that he wears. He's doing the best that he can with working full time and running a club and helping out with the girls. But we saw a need, right? Like, he can't do everything. So we wanted to help him out. And so we did. We started to really not even really think as much, but putting stuff up there and letting people know what was going on. So some of the different things that we've done that have been super helpful is, again, we had that open meeting and we put that out there on social media. Please come hear what's going on. In preparation for that, we put together a slideshow that was a live link, and we used, it's called Adobe Page and Adobe Spark, I guess it's called. So if you download Adobe Spark, it's a really great way to make a quick web page, and you can take the link and you can post it on online, and you can really just list a lot of things without having the know-how of putting a website together. So we put together what's currently going on in New Jersey, just to give people an idea of what was the, you know, culture at the time, what was being offered. We had that meeting, and then really things started to spiral. And so we put together a Google form. So this was, I think, really important, I think pivotal for getting information of girls who are currently wrestling in New Jersey. So basically, if you go on YouTube, you can type in how to use a Google form and you can figure it all out. But it's super simple, and you put together a list of questions, and then it comes into a form, and you can get a link to send. So we put that link on social media, and then anyone who saw it, we basically called it like list of girls who are currently wrestling in New Jersey. And when you click on that link, you could answer the questions like, you know, how old are you? What weight are you wrestling? Where is your address? What's your phone number? Are you interested in wrestling on dual teams? What is your experience? Are you experienced with freestyle? Are you experienced with folk style? And all those different types of questions. And we made them optional. So like, it was basic if you wanted to just put your basic information on there, or more in depth if you wanted to offer that information. And then once they put their information in, it populates into responses that I can easily put together email lists, that I could get information out to people that wasn't just the information that we were putting up on social media. So that allowed us to really spread the word about the training opportunities and the competition opportunities. So we tried to reach out and do some research on what competitions our girls should be going to, folk style and freestyle wise. And then once we had that list of girls who were currently wrestling in New Jersey, we could shoot that out to them so that they knew, okay, here's the annual schedule for New Jersey. Here's the events where we're going to be sending coaches through USA Wrestling. Here's where we're going to try to get our girls to go to, so that we're coming together. And we're also reaching out to other states and trying to get them to come as well. So those were the kind of big things that we've been doing on our social media. But we really just try to keep it interesting. We want people checking in. We've also paired and partnered with like Lehigh University, John Trenge. He's working really hard to bring girls in and to offer programming for the girls. So I think really just being open to, again, not sort of having like your girls and keeping your girls, but spreading the love out and having these resources be open to everyone, because that increases the ability for girls to get great workout partners. It increases people's just like willingness and desire to be part of something, because it feels inclusive rather than exclusive. So those have been sort of the tips for that we've done in New Jersey.
I think it seemed like a bigger like network that it might actually be, right? Like you've created, you know, kind of a movement that's feels bigger than just, you know, the small numbers that you might have for now, and that gets that excitement back in. Swinging around back to a question that I had seen from Annie Foster in Idaho. She was saying that Idaho's stuck on a very high number in order for them to even start considering adding a girls division. So she wants to kind of know, how can she help IHSAA to understand how to move past that, you know, that number that they're just totally stuck on.
I think you got to have a couple of things. You have to figure out what the in is. I wanted to say this earlier, but if I were her, if we were in a situation where I didn't know someone like Bill Bruno, I would definitely go on to the state association site and see who all the board members are. And then I'd kind of go down that list and figure out who's interested in wrestling. And so I'd kind of attack it that way, because I think you do need a little bit of an in to kind of get the ball rolling. It's education. Like that's just people who don't know what they're talking about saying that we need this, you need to get this number up to something before we can consider anything. They're just not educated. We weren't educated. I thought it would take 5 years until I talked to Joan. 124 is great. We could have a state tournament, no problem. And I was joking with Laurie. I said, back in the Stone Ages, when the men's wrestling started in New Jersey, I went to Newton High School. We have the most state champs in New Jersey. You want to know the reason why? Because we were one of the only schools with wrestling in the whole state. So basically, there was only a few schools that were wrestling at the time. There wasn't a lot of wrestlers, but they wrestled anyway. They had a state tournament. The same thing goes here. You can't hammer it home enough. The fact that there's a state tournament will grow your numbers or double them. And she shouldn't be stuck on that. She shouldn't be stuck on them saying no. If you get the compelling why to the people and you educate them, you get an in, every hand in the room will go up. You just need a platform to talk to the people and educate them.
And here's the thing, like, I'll tell you, I started doing some videos and I started putting them out on social media, and I am the last person that anyone would ever have assumed would do that. Okay. Like I was like,
that's true.
We have a great idea. I think people should do these videos. Like, we have to educate people. We have to let them know what's going on. And everyone was like, I'm not doing it. And so I literally stuck myself out there because I really felt the need to educate people. So my advice too would be like, get on a video. Even, it doesn't have to be anything, it doesn't have to look great, it doesn't have to be in this wonderful area, or you just get online and film a video with some girls, with you, talking about wrestling. I think one of the biggest things that's a takeaway for us is tell your story. Tell your story of what's going on. Even if it's small, it's still compelling. It gives you a why. Don't be afraid to get online, put yourself out there, tell your story.
Okay. So, Katherine, throw that next question at him.
Okay, so the next, there's a lot of really good questions, so we can we might just keep diving into questions. They keep coming. So what are your thoughts, Chris and Laurie, on the next level competition for the girls, NCAA or Ivy League women's wrestling opportunities?
Well, there's a, what is it called? The there's a proposal into the NCAA to make it a Division I sport. Emerging sports status. We're trying to get emerging. There you go. Thank you, Joe. We're trying to get wrestle like a girl, and they're trying to get emerging sports status, which would allow it to be an NCAA sport. In order to do that, I don't know the exact details. Some schools have had to agree that they would start a program. So there are D1 teams that are agreeing to start programs. And then, so in the Ivy League, Columbia has done a really good job. I'm going to give Kira Berry a little shout out here. She's been working hard. They have actually a girl wrestler on their team. She trains in their RTC, Bree, and she actually did well at the end of the year. So they have like sort of a little model of like how you could do it. And we've thought a lot about it too. The difficulty in the Ivy League is sort of there's these, there's these admission slots that they're obviously the kids are brilliant that get in, whether they're an athlete or not, but there's these admission slots and they don't want to really add anymore. So there's a tough road to figure out how to make that happen, but we are talking about it and we are discussing it. I do think, just like I said to the state people, I was like, who's going to be the last one? That's my question. I don't want to be the last one. I want to be one of the first ones. So we're working hard to make it happen. I don't know how long it'll be, but it's going to happen. And when it does, we're going to look at it and we're going to say, I can't believe that this wasn't here earlier. And so we're just kind of hoping that that happens sooner than later.
I think it's pretty cool too what they're doing at Columbia. They're not people might think, oh, when you add girls wrestling to an Ivy League or any institution for that matter, you're going to add a whole team. And so when we think about just adding one wrestler at Columbia, it's really being that piloting program to see how they could have an parallel schedule to the men and having her compete, yet still having the training opportunities and being able to have access to a great academic school like Columbia. So it's really thinking outside the box and making opportunities for girls. And again, like we said, Katherine, that growth mindset for something different is okay. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now there's no colleges. Remind me, there's a like the first NCAA college that signed the female. Is that East Coast?
That is,
I think it's actually Presbyterian College in, I think, South Carolina.
South Carolina. Okay.
South Carolina or Georgia, I forget. I apologize.
Yeah, Presbyterian College in South Carolina. Mark Cody, who was the former coach of American in Oklahoma, I think is the head coach there. I think Arizona State might have done something recently too. I'm not positive, but not sure about that. But I think it's going to happen. Definitely.
Another thing that we're doing, I think, is great for all of the colleges across the country to do. This is our first year trying it, and Wrestle Like a Girl is going to, be behind us and help us pilot it. Is in New Jersey, we're trying to use our 3 of our Division I wrestling colleges, and we're going to host a girls' duel prior to their men's wrestling duel.
Excellent.
We're going to do that at Ryder. So John Hangy at Ryder has been very welcoming to the girls, and definitely is something that he's going to help us host this year. Scott Goodale at Rutgers is also allowing us to have a girls' duel prior. So Team New Jersey, like you said, we really are feeling the state pride. So Team New Jersey is going to compete against Team Pennsylvania, and Team New Jersey is going to compete against Team New York. So like you said too earlier, Katherine, really trying to share our networking situation. So reaching out to Emma Randall in New York, and reaching out to Chris Atkinson and Tom Tomio in PA, and trying to work out those kinds of things. I think every D1 college program who's got some interest in having women's wrestling needs to showcase and invite women in some way. So what better way to do that than to have the girls in the state have a dual competition prior to one of their events. And they already have everything set up. It's super easy. Literally the referees are already there. The mat's already down. Why not use that time and bring the girls in? So
Exactly. Wonderful way to get it out in front of lots of people that need to see girls wrestling girls.
And that's another thing that you can do when you're reaching out. That's a purpose to reach out to the college coach and see what his interest is in girls wrestling, and see if he's willing to put an event together like that with you. So if they like that and they see that went really well, maybe they're going to help you with the next step of getting that tournament added to the state.
Mm-hmm. Katherine, another question on your end?
Yes. Chase Holman in North Carolina asking you, Chris, if you had to get other college coaches on board to spearhead, or did you mostly focus on the high school coaches?
I mostly focused on the high school coaches and just our little committee. Laurie and I have been talking. I obviously know most of the D1 coaches. We're thinking about talking to some of the coaches in Pennsylvania who I have good relationships with, to see if Pennsylvania's having a real tough time just getting a platform to speak to the governing body. They just won't listen to them. They won't give them an opportunity. So I'm probably going to lean on some of my contacts over there to see if they can possibly open a door for some of these people, or even me. I would even go and give the why or whatever. But like I said, you got to just kind of figure out how to get your foot in the door.
And I think we're seeing that in a lot of states. There are 7 or 8 states that really had their state association from the top down really say it's time. This needs to happen. And just like you guys, they created that committee and they just pushed forward. And then there are other states that really need to go through that membership and are struggling a bit. But the explosion this year, going from 20 years it took to have 6 states have a state championship officially, to this year, we've really added 8 new states. We're just waiting for Maine to go through and just finalize their process for it. But they've already said that, it's on the docket. They're just waiting for that final vote in November, kind of like you guys just did your vote last week on the finalization. So what a huge explosion. People are seeing it. Coaches are understanding it. So I think it's going to happen. Hopefully I'll be out of a job in about 2 years,
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So one other thing about the college coaches, one interesting sort of side thing that's happened is my program's got a lot of attention, and I didn't set out to do this to say like, hey, let's do this so Princeton wrestling can get a lot of great publicity. But I swear it's been like, and it was during a little bit of a quiet period we were doing this. I mean, it was the only time ever since I've been here that Princeton wrestling was on the front page of the newspapers, not just the sports section, sanctioning the sport. And then also I had some involvement. So Princeton University got some ink. So kind of interesting. It's it's been really good for our program, and I didn't even mean for it to be good. So to kind of talk to the other college coaches, it's like, hey, this is a great opportunity to grow your fan base. Again, it's getting into the other, that other half of humanity to be involved. And I think you're doing the right thing too. So, so there's sort of been that side benefit that I think I would push towards to the other coaches as well.
Right. Sounds great. And the other part of that is we want to grow boys wrestling as well. We know we've been losing numbers in high school over the last 5 years. This year, the NFHS told us there was just a slight increase finally on those numbers, but we know they've been dwindling, and we know girls wrestling can help support that and bring more cousins and brothers and nephews, nieces. Everybody can come into the mat room now, so they won't be sitting on the sidelines watching another sport and thinking about joining. They'll watch that older sister. And I know Tennessee, Mark Reeves said they've had that happen. Coaches are saying, I now have the brothers of girls that have been on teams now in the wrestling team because the sister was a member. Yeah. So it's going to happen. It's going to grow the sport, when we open that door to the women. Mm-hmm. Katherine, another question on your end?
Yeah. Do you guys feel like there's a company or brand out there that shows the same support for girls wrestling as you have within your state?
A company or brand?
Brand. I think there's some companies, Wrestler Chick and.
Well, yeah. So Chick Wrestler right now. You mean like for apparel and things like that?
I think I think a lot of the companies, they, especially within the wrestling community, they end up having kind of like either the sponsorship that they're providing, where they, are outfitting teams, or somebody who's just like, we want to take this on and come on board and help be a part of like kind of that growth movement, especially since they have a lot of that social media influence. And see if I'm guessing they're asking if you've had anybody kind of like jump on board along with you or help support. And they all, just like you're saying, like the college coach support, maybe there's been a company or brand who's also jumped on the bandwagon.
Well, I think the best place to look, it's been pretty interesting, and this is not a bad thing at all. I think that there's a ton of clubs in New Jersey, so this is a little bit of a different answer, but I'm going to talk about why it's beneficial. So there's a ton of clubs in New Jersey, and sort of what's happened is we've become the hub of sort of women's wrestling. So they're all contacting us, but they're seeing it as an opportunity to grow their numbers. So they're sort of, now the door is open. I'm gonna mention obviously Mike Harris at Total Force, but also Steve Rivera at Elite Wrestling in New Jersey. He has a Friday night ladies' night, and a lot of girls come, and it's free in his club. And he's done a really good job of really promoting wrestling. And we go to that practice even though we have our own club, because it's just embracing the movement, really. Obviously, down the road, these clubs want to have paying members, but they're helping grow the numbers, and I think that's a good thing. That's the free market. So once everyone gets on board and realizes there's a marketing opportunity, I think that helps everything. That helps grow everything.
I think it helps too to have some outside. So like we sort of have this like New Jersey girls wrestling, right? So it's a little more not that other people aren't trustworthy, but it's like it's we're not associated with trying to make money. So we never want to make or have people think that that's what our interests are. Like my interests, Avi, every time I make a decision and I move to do something for the girls in New Jersey, I always think like, what's the best thing for the girls? What's the best thing for the girls? So we always want to have that in mind first. And definitely I want to make sure that whenever we're offering training opportunities that we're involving as many clubs that want to be involved. So we are making an effort to, obviously it's easy for us to pull the girls into the Princeton Wrestling Club because we're here, we're doing it, and it's convenient. But we are also taking them to clubs around the state to offer training camps before events and to make sure that they're meeting other coaches and other training partners and making sure that they're feeling comfortable walking in. Because I think the hardest part is walking into that club probably the first time, right? Where you're like, what's going on? Who's going to be here? How's this going to feel? So if we can offer our girls opportunities to have everybody come to the club and everybody meet the coaches and everybody feel comfortable at the same time, then they'll go back to those clubs and they'll know now what their resources are. Listen, we don't all respond to the same coaches. So all the girls are going to find what club works best for them. And that's totally totally great for us. We also want them to meet those workout partners, because when you don't have, you know, 4,000 girls wrestling in your state, you might not have such great workout partners. You have to travel like an hour or so to get to them. So if they're going to be going to different clubs, we want the girls to feel comfortable going in there too. In terms of the apparel question that you asked, Katherine, we again are going to think first for the girls. And so we really want to push the apparel companies, and right now Chick Wrestler is working hard to help us to make apparel that's female friendly. So what I want to see for the girls is that we're thinking of them when we go to these competitions, whether it be local competitions, whether it be, you know, Mid-Atlantic region for us, whether it be national competitions. And I want to see girls going in gear that they feel comfortable in, so they have options. You know, there's no reason why today's day and age we shouldn't be able to find a legging with a zipper on the side of the leg so they can take their leggings off and not take their wrestling shoes off. So, you know, Chick Wrestler is helping us work through some things like that. You know, this weekend, for instance, it's hard for me to watch. We were at a girls wrestling tournament in Newark, PA, the Columbus Duels. So we took 2 full, you know, New Jersey teams, 17 girl teams. We had some fill-ins from other states. So thank you for the other states that helped us out. But we felt really a lot of pride in that, and the girls had a great time. And you know, I was seeing some girls in some singlets that were men's cut, and it can get difficult for these girls. So we're really happy that we in New Jersey have Lee James, who's a world bronze medalist, who's helping us to coach the girls, who's really helping us to you know, build that apparel for the girls, and she's working hard to source some of those materials and really be thinking of the females. So to answer that question, but again, the way that we're heading in the direction we're heading in, we're not, you know, we're not in any kind of way trying to make money off of the girls. It's always the girls first.
And I think your understanding, I've heard other states kind of feel the challenge of, as a few girls get started, they're kind of saying, oh, well, these are my girls here and these are my girls here. But you guys are embracing that. And we're just really talking to other states about the same thing. We've just got to embrace the girls and bring them together to help grow the sport. And it'll grow, and those clubs will have more girls, and you know, it'll happen. But right now they need to see each other, they need to talk to each other, and they need to experience wrestling together. So I think what you're doing there is really important. And Laurie, your video or your PowerPoint, that's online on the New Jersey wrestling page, because people really are to look for that. I know that maybe that's something you could push back again, but that's really good.
You know, it's spelled out New Jersey Girls Wrestling. So if you go there, I'll pin it up there. But yeah, it's Adobe Spark. You can get it on your phone, you can get it on your computer. And what I love about that resource is that it's compatible for all the different devices that you have. So it looks the same on your phone, it looks the same on your computer after you get the product put together. And it's just a great, easy way to put stuff up online. So there's 3 versions of it. It's like Spark Video, Spark Post, and Spark Page. So like all those posts that you see that I do, that's all through Adobe Spark Post. And it's so intuitive. You can do it quickly on your phone. Like sometimes I'll do it in my bathroom before work. I'm like, okay. Then I find him, he's like, you're going to be late for work, because I'm like posting something for girls wrestling. It takes 2 seconds to put it up there. And if you can just constantly keep everyone up and you know, in the loop about what's going on with training and all that, it's just it's an easy way to do it.
You don't need any of those to view it though. Any web browser can view it. The other thing is, if this goes up as a link or on YouTube or whatever, we could put the link under the video as well.
Right. It will be. It'll be here. So, you know, I know we're right at an hour. Katherine, unless there's another question, I think Chris and Laurie, people can contact you through the New Jersey Facebook page if they want to ask more questions or connect with you. Is that correct? Is that a good spot to connect, or through the Princeton webpage or Princeton's Facebook?
Socials is good too. I'm on those a lot. She's on more of the women's page. So yeah, anywhere we'll be responsive, definitely.
That sounds good. And for our women's development committee, I work with Andrea Yamamoto out of Washington State, and we provide resources for coaches and athletes and state sanctioning organizations. And you can catch me, Joan Fulp, on Facebook. You can, you know, message me there. Or we also have a web page under USA Wrestling for women's sanctioning, even though we keep trying to throw that word out a little bit, the conversation, but that's kind of where those resources are. And Katherine, LuchaFIT, you know, we have to say thank you for hosting us tonight and pulling this together for us. And Katherine does all that great writing for articles on girls wrestling, high school wrestling, college, and a lot of other people are writing for LuchaFIT. That's really fun to see all those articles come across to embrace girls wrestling. So are we good? Shall we say goodnight? And thank you guys. You guys are a dynamic duo. Let me tell you, it's been exciting to hear and just to watch your excitement, but to see everything happening. We're just looking forward to that state championship and to see the growth numbers. You know, it'll be fun to see how the numbers change this year for New Jersey.
One quick little cool story.
Yeah, jump in. Anything else? You guys, you bet.
Yeah, and there's a request for you guys to recap your elevator pitch, which you could do it in the elevator, you know, time frame.
So you want to do that now or later? What's that?
Oh, say that again.
I said, do you want me to do it now or video it and put it up later? Or
I think do it now, and then if you had a story, you can absolutely include that.
So just a little story. So we decided to add a girls only, and this kind of Joan made me think of this a little bit. We decided to add a girls only practice once a week to kind of carry that thread through the season of freestyle, and it was the coolest thing, honestly, that I think, other than all their hands going up when they voted. To add the sport, all 38 or 39, I can't remember how many people, when they went up like this with no questions, that was probably my favorite moment. My second favorite moment was we had a practice, and it was an all-girls practice, and I think 17 showed up to the first practice, and they're running around, and the smiles on these girls' faces is amazing, and they were so joyful and happy to be competing and training with other women. And I go over and I start talking to this dad, and I said, you know, who's your daughter? And he told me, and I said, how long she been wrestling? He said, 8 years. And I said, oh, that's so cool. It's, you know, it's great we're having the state tournament, right? And he goes, you don't even know. He goes, my daughter's been wrestling for 8 years. She also plays softball. And, you know, at the beginning of this year, she said to us, she brought us and she sat us down, and we love wrestling. And she said, I don't think I'm going to wrestle this year. And they said, why? Why aren't you going to wrestle? She's like, why should I wrestle? There's no real reason for me to wrestle. And so she was at that practice, and Laurie remembers it too. And she was so happy. Now she's going to wrestle because there's a state tournament. So it's like cool. Like instantly we had like this story of this girl who had been doing it her whole life, didn't have anything to work for. Now that she does, she's going to stick it out. So that was like my maybe tied for first favorite moment that I could think of since we did this. It was really cool. So the elevator speech is pretty quick. So basically you want to get to the why we should do this. Basically, there's girls in all the member schools of all the states. Every day they get ready. They put on their shoes in a different locker room. They walk down a hallway. They walk into a room, and it's full of men. And they have to have the courage to go in there because they love the sport so much. They go in there and they fight it out, and they sweat it out, and they bleed it out with the boys. And then on the weekends, they got to go and they have to wrestle against one boy out on a mat all alone in a singlet. Oftentimes, like Laurie said, a singlet that's not made for them. Mm-hmm. And there's still snickering, unfortunately. There's still some whispering in the side, look at the girl wrestle. And they still go out there and they wrestle, and they have the courage to do it. And they have the courage to work hard and prepare themselves just like the boys. And then what's the reward they get at the end of the season? They're sitting in the stands. They're in the bleachers watching the boys try to win a state title in the sport that they love, that they're not allowed to go try to accomplish. So for me, that's the major why. And then the other why is the soccer thing. I mean, pick a sport, any sport, and go back in time to when soccer, women's soccer, when they were having the meeting on women's soccer. This is what cracks me up. It's like when they were having that women's soccer meeting, if you knew then what you know now, would there even be a discussion about this vote? Every hand would go up. And so I think if you get to those compelling whys and you can get someone to listen who has some ability to make a difference, and this is what's funny, to really make a difference. We talk about Title IX and all these other things. Let's do something. Let's have the courage, the guys in these state associations, to start something. So that's the elevator speech. I really believe in it, and I'll give it to the guys. If they need me, I'll come down and give the speech.
That sounds great. I know Andrea Yamamoto last night said to me, why are we still making the girls carry the weight? Why are we not from that educational stance from those coaches not saying the door needs to be open for you? Why do we still make them carry the burden of stepping in that mat room? Just like you said, we've got to make those changes. So
100%.
Exactly. Great conversation tonight. You guys, this has been fantastic. Katherine, again, thanks to LuchaFIT for pulling us all together and having the webinar tonight. And I think we're over and out. People, contact us. You can contact Katherine, Chris and Laurie, myself, Joan Fulp, and we'll be glad to help any state out in the process. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.